And I guess that would leave number 12, and absolutely dead last, that would be Connor. Let me make sure that I got that list right. Let me grab that list. Oh, yeah, here it is right here underneath.
This is unbelievable.
Emmy.
It's always your own people
fantasy football
do you dirty. That's my other place of work that I was done at. Like, that's literally when I'm not here. I am in that exact office with that exact backdrop.
I will tell you, the message I gave to Todd when I ordered, I said, listen, hey, Todd, Matthew Berry from NBC Sports. I don't care what you do, but you have to introduce yourself as Emmy Award-winning Todd Zeal, and Connor has to pick last. That's all I care. I don't care. Do anything else. And then,
Phenomenal.
He's amazing.
Thank you, Todd. That was awesome.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Oh, is there any doubt why he is Emmy Award-winning Todd Zeal? He drinks for free. He crushed Connor's soul like he did at the Emmy Awards, like he did yesterday. Surprisingly, Connor couldn't show his face today. Matthew Berry, Lawrence Jackson, Lord Don't Lose, Jay Croucher, and look who's here, Trysta Krick. I'm sure you've heard her on WFAN. You saw her on Barstool. You've seen her on It Is What It Is with Cam and Mace.
You're a big Cam and Mace fan, right?
I'm huge, massive. I'm on every show. I'm transcripting. I'm in the Reddit threads. What I will tell you, though, is we could not be more thrilled that we managed to steal her away. Trysta now a big part of what we're doing here in terms of fantasy and betting at NBC Sports. So, Trysta, welcome officially.
Yeah.
I will just tell you guys this because we met in person just a little while ago, but we have followed each other on social for a number of years. Trysta is a very, very fun social follow. She's like Lawrence, who's also a great social follow, and completely unlike Jay, who does nothing but post videos of his kids or Nas Reed propaganda.
Yes. Very both wholesome family kind of activities for me. Yeah, propaganda and children.
Yeah, if you want family-friendly content, don't come to my page, though. I was asking.
Wholesome there, huh?
No.
Yeah, nothing wholesome. I was asking Steve. I said, "What is Matthew going to give me a hard time about? Because it's got to be the chain, right?"
Right. Yeah. Sure.
And I just took it out of your wardrobe.
Everyone always says, "There goes Matthew Berry."
That's too much
he is
Cam
off
and
the
Mace.
chain.
That's what that is.
Exactly.
Too much swag.
I'm off the chain. All right, so it is our quarterback positional preview show. We're going to go through our quarterback tiers, Trysta, so I hand over the reins and chains to you.
Yeah, let's start with tier 1. We've got some sound of Jayden Daniels talking about what we all feel about, is excited that Terry McLaurin is back. That contract dispute has ended.
But I was super excited for Terry, just how much work he put in over these years, and he's deserving of it. So I'm happy that we're back out here, and now we're moving forward. We're getting ready for week 1.
Yeah, because what does it unlock for you, like when Terry is out there on the field?
I think it unlocks a lot. We got Terry out there, it can help keep defensive coordinators up at night a little bit more. So it's good to have him back out there.
Yeah, tier 1, your guy, Jayden Daniels, JD5. We've got Lamar Jackson, we've got Josh Allen, and we've rounded out the group with Jalen Hurts, who, spoiler alert, I think is in for a bigger year than some people expect. For you guys, Matthew, how big of a priority that you must get one of these tier 1 guys?
I wouldn't use the word must. What I would say, though, is that this year in leagues, and we're talking about 1 quarterback leagues, right? We'll talk about Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues in a little bit, but when it comes to 1 quarterback leagues, I want to be one of the first guys in my league to get a quarterback, one of those first 4 guys, or I want to be one of the last, because I think once you get, and we'll talk about Burrow in a second, but I think once you get past those 4 guys who give you so many points with both their arms and their legs, that there is a drop-off. And so I want one of those 4 guys. You guys know I love Daniels. I think he could be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this year, but I found myself with a lot of Jalen Hurts this year because I don't think there's a lot of difference between those 4 guys. Yeah. And for some reason, Hurts is going like around and sometimes a round and a half later than those other 3 Lawrence.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, so when you're talking about Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, those are the guys who's going to get you double-digit rushing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. For Lamar and Jayden Daniels, they're not going to do that, but they're going to run for 800, 900, 1,000 rushing yards. So that's what sets them apart from the rest of the group. But when it comes to drafting these guys, yes, of course we want one of these guys in our fantasy drafts, right? But you're not going to force the issue at the end of the first round, the early second round. But if you're 3rd and 4th and you're coming up on that clock, you feel really good about a Josh Allen and Lamar. Jayden Daniels and Jalen Hurts probably that next round, but if you don't get that, then for me, it would be time to wait.
Yeah, I think of these guys, Hurts is the clear value relative to ADP, where I think people are baking in too much the year that Saquon had last year and how big a part he was of the offense. Yeah. Saquon's just not going to touch the ball close to 500 times, again, regular season and postseason combined. Jalen Hurts, he's going to throw the ball more this year because they just can't throw it any less than they did last year. Like, we kind of forget that even though it was Saquon's show last year, 2022, 4 weeks to go in the season, Jalen Hurts is the MVP favorite. Halfway through 2023, Jalen Hurts is the MVP favorite. This guy can put up passing stat numbers, and I think he'll do that more than he did last year. And the other thing, too, is that like some of these guys, like regression is coming. Like Josh Allen's going to throw more picks this year. He's not only going to throw 6 picks. Lamar Jackson's very likely not going to throw 41 passing touchdowns. That's just not in his arsenal. Lamar doesn't really run it in the red zone anymore because they got King Henry. Jalen Hurts, very stable production.
Yeah, you know, the weird thing about Lamar Jackson is that, like, at the end of the year, he's going to be one of the top 3 fantasy, barring injury, he's going to be a top 3 fantasy quarterback. But I don't have a ton of Lamar. I have some, but I don't have a ton of Lamar because I feel like there's weirdly less consistency. Like, he'll have 40-point games, and then he'll have like a 12-point game because Henry gets a couple of rushing touchdowns, Kyle Hamilton runs back a pick 6 or whatever, and, you know, they just don't need to blow out teams. Like,
it's the same thing that Jalen Hurts kind of suffered from, too. These two teams, Eagles and Ravens, they get ahead all the time. But for Jalen Hurts, he's got the tush push near the end zone, whereas to Lamar, he doesn't have that. So that's where those less than 20-point games will come, and then it's just that's how it goes. You got to live with it.
Remember 2 years ago, Lamar wins MVP 2023 and kind of has a blah fantasy season because they're just winning games the whole time. They never have to throw in the fourth quarter. The other thing with Lamar, too, is like he's won 2 MVPs. So he doesn't have anything to prove in the regular season. His assessment will
probably should have won a third.
Yes,
but we want him to prove it again in fantasy.
Well, right, and the other thing about Lamar, though, I will say is that the emergence of Rashad Bateman fully healthy down the stretch last year, and they paid him this offseason. Obviously, you've got Zay Flowers there. Once likely comes back, which should be in the first couple of weeks, him and Andrews together as well. They added DeAndre Hopkins, who I think will be a decent red zone threat. I don't know that he's going to be a fantasy factor by himself, but he's another guy that, you know, gives Lamar an option in the red zone. So anyway, like, he's my number 2.
Yeah, we have a question from Nanya, Nanya Business. The difference in Tier 1 and Tier 3 isn't worth the draft capital at QB for me. What do you think, Matthew?
I disagree, Nanya. I would address you by your name, but I don't have it. Obviously I disagree, but I understand what he's saying, which is like I do think when you think about sort of the Tier 3 guys, right? There are question marks around the Baker Mayfields of the world or the Kyler Murrays of the world. Like, I mean, they're in the Tier 3. Like, I feel these 4 guys, rock solid production. There are some warts. Again, like Tier 3, to your point, like, you can wait. If you don't get one of these 4 guys, I would not panic. Right. But I also wouldn't reach. I'd rather, I've been either one of the first guys in my league to get a quarterback this year or one of the last, because I think once you get past 5, there's kind of a sameness there, and you're just as good with a Dak Prescott or a Justin Fields as you are with, like a Baker Mayfield or Bo Nix.
You mentioned the boomer bust nature of Lamar, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, like, how important is consistency from a week-to-week basis when you're drafting and you're thinking about that versus just overall end-of-season total points?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're drafting a quarterback high, that's one of the reasons you're doing it, is because you're locking in a big number each week. The thing about Lamar, though, is Lamar can single-handedly win you a week. And he'll do that 4 or 5 times over the course of the season, and that's the difference in a lot of leagues of making the playoffs or not. Like, he will single-handedly win you a week.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Josh Allen, too, and that's why these guys are at the top. Josh Allen had, a 51-point fantasy game last year against the Rams. Like, if you're on the brink of making the playoffs in your fantasy league and Josh Allen has that week and you got a bunch of 5s and 6s from your receiver, that's big. And those 4 quarterbacks at the top can do that. Dak Prescott can have great games because we know he's going to throw the ball. We know he's got the receivers. But can you say, I feel pretty damn good Dak Prescott giving me a 50-point game? You ain't feeling as good as Lamar, Josh Allen, or Jayden Daniels.
And to your point, Ryan McGlynn says, not much talk about Josh Allen in this show. Why? Is it the wide receiver group this year for the Bills? Are you worried?
I just talked about him.
Yeah, he just talked about him. Look, 5 straight seasons as a top literally 5 straight seasons as a top 2 fantasy quarterback for Josh Allen, proud fantasy life investor, as everyone knows. I just don't think there's not much reason to talk about him because he's a superstar. Like, what else are you going to say about him? The guy is consistently great year in, year out, and we expect that offense to be, again, one of the best in the NFL, and it all starts with 17, Jay.
Yeah, one of the weird wrinkles of this season is that, so the Bills last year, they were 2 seed, they win the division, 13-4, Allen wins MVP. They have one of the easiest schedules in football this year.
Yeah.
That's just how it's shaken out with how the scheduling's done, the fact that they don't play in a particularly difficult division too. So I'd be a little bit concerned that Josh Allen this year, and look, Josh Allen's going to be fine. You take him as a top 4 quarterback, but be a little bit concerned we might see some 2023 Lamar in 2025 Josh Allen, where the team's just winning by a lot because they're beating up on teams that they're a lot better than. But look, Allen is extremely high floor because of the rushing and because, yes, even though he doesn't have the most amazing weapons, they're still, like, he's not dependent on throwing deep. It didn't really work for them last year. Like, it's a lot of short stuff. It's a lot of him creating, him putting the cape on, and Josh Allen will be fine. It's just, I'm a bit concerned he's not going to have the type of Superman type stat lines because they're winning a ton.
I'm still, we'll see how it shakes out with the defense. I will say that Allen has been one of those guys that hasn't sort of taken the brakes off. Like, he still plays at a crush 'em kind of level, even when they're winning late in the third quarter here as well. I think the emergence of Keon Coleman, we expect him to take a big step this year. The addition of Josh Palmer was kind of sneaky good. If Shakir and Kincaid are healthy this year, I do think there's enough there that
I think that their pass catches are definitely better than what we give them credit for sure. Like you said, Keon Coleman, rookie last year, Josh Palmer, guy that we used to, when Justin Herbert used to throw a lot of passes, Josh Palmer was the guy catching the deep passes for him.
On the point about putting the brakes on, that is one thing with Allen where he does only have 1 speed. Patrick Mahomes has 2 speeds. Patrick Mahomes, in the playoffs, once we get there, he starts to scramble a lot more. He puts his body on the line more specifically in the playoffs. Josh Allen doesn't do that. Josh Allen has no on-off switch. He's just full go all the time, which with fantasy is good.
And the last thing I will say here is, again, like, just this is true for any position. But you don't have to finish the year as the number 1 option at a position to be worth being the number 1 guy there. When you're drafting a guy number 1 at his position, what you're drafting there is floor. You're basically saying, like, if I'm going to use a 3rd-round pick on Josh Allen, I want to know that, like, unless he gets hurt, that this guy is going to return that value. And again, literally 5 straight years, he's been either QB1 or QB2 in fantasy points per game. So just an incredibly high floor. He's just an incredibly safe player, at quarterback for you.
Yeah, let's move over to tier 2. A tier of his own, a man on an island, Joe Burrow, who says he's slinging the rock better than he has pretty much in his career. This tape is from a few weeks ago.
Feel great. Body feels good. I think this is the best I'm throwing it in several years, so I'm excited about that. Excited about where our team's at too. A lot of young guys stepping up, making plays, so very optimistic.
Why do you say that it's the best you've thrown it several? What makes you feel that way?
You're out there every day.
Wow. Some spicy commentary back to the reporter from Joe Burrow. You see me out there every day. Matthew, why is Joe Burrow in a tier all by himself?
Well, just listen, he doesn't have the rushing upside of the 4 guys we just mentioned, right? But he also doesn't have the warts of some of the guys that we're about ready to talk about here. So, I mean, there's an incredibly high floor with Joe Burrow, who's averaged at least 2 touchdown passes per game in 2024, 2022, and 2021. Those are the 3 years that he was fully healthy. He was QB3 last year, QB4 in 2022, QB10 in 2021. Like, when he's healthy, he's always been a top 10 fantasy quarterback. Chase, Higgins, Gesicki, Chase Brown in the backfield. Like, we like the weapons around him. We don't love the defense very much. We know Zach Taylor, this is going to be a very pass-heavy, pass-friendly, play at a high pace of play offense. So, again, very high floor for Joe Burrow. Very easily could lead the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns this year. That's well within the range of outcomes. He just doesn't run the way that Allen, Jaxson, Daniels, and Hurts does, which is why I think he's in a tier by himself, because after Burrow, and we'll get into the next tier here in a second, but after Burrow, like, each one of the guys we'll talk about, we like them, but each one of them I could sort of poke a hole in. Sure. There's questions about whether, can they stay healthy, or their weapons, or their offensive line, or whatever. I don't think there's any questions about Joe Burrow other than the fact that he just doesn't run.
Yeah, the flaw with Burrow, I guess, would be that he's the most likely to get killed by his offensive line.
Yes.
These guys, but that's in terms of actually drafting a guy, not too worried about the injury risk with Joe Burrow. I do think that the reason why he could be considered in Tier 1 is that I can't remember the last time a guy has come into the season with the weapons that Burrow has, the talent that Burrow has, and the offensive responsibility he has because of how bad his defense is. Like, Joe Burrow could easily be 5,000 passing yards, 45 passing touchdowns this year, one of those like Drew Brees Saints, where the Saints would go 8-8 and Drew Brees would have 5K passing yards. I can't remember a guy entering a season with that kind of upside just from a numbers purely passing perspective, since like Mahomes with Tyreek and Kelsey or Peyton back in Denver.
Yeah.
Like, Joe Burrow could have that type of season.
That's very true. It's well within the range of outcomes there.
Question from Chris Mucky. Does signing Trey Hendrickson actually hurt Burrow's fantasy ceiling?
Only unless he clones himself and there's
I was
10
about to
other
say,
of
I was
them.
about to say, if he go on the other
Yeah,
team
like, what is
and
that?
try to sack Joe Burrow, then yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Or if they were able to clone him and there was 11 Hendricksons on the other side of the ball for the Bengals.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
but he's only one man.
Do they essentially mean, does Chris Mickey mean that essentially they won't be in situations where he has to throw as much?
But
Yeah,
he
the
played
question-
last year. He was the sack leader, so that's clear. You know, it doesn't affect it. And another thing about Burrow is the efficiency. We saw earlier on the screen, 70% completion percentage. And when you throw so much, and you're going to throw the touchdowns, but he didn't even throw double-digit interceptions. So that's why he's in that tier by himself. Guys like Dak and Baker, they're going to throw a lot, but can they have that type of touchdown-to-internet ratio with all those yards? That's why Burrow is like that.
With Hendrickson, like, he finished second in Defensive Player of the Year last year, and they still had a bottom 3 defense. I think just in general, like, the defense should be better. It should regress just because defenses typically regress, just turnover luck, the randomness of defense relative to offense each year. But it's not going to be a good defense. They just don't have the horses for it. So I think that Burrow, to your point, Lawrence, about how consistent he is, like, the good thing with Burrow and his floor is that he has a low A-dot. Like, he doesn't really throw deep that much. It's a lot of short, intermediate stuff and high 71%.
And then when he needs to take a shot to chase, he will.
The reason he's able to throw the ball short so much is because the DBs are playing off, right? They got T. Higgins and Jamar, so you can't play up on him. He's going to hit those all the time. And what does Jamar Chase do? He'll turn that 10 yards into 70 to 80, and that's where
And I'll also say that this is a small thing, but I think it's important. Like, they come into the season, remember last year, T. Higgins banged up, and also, like, there was a contract controversy. He missed a lot of time in camp and everything like that. Joe Burrow didn't play in the preseason last year, remember?
Wrist.
Wrist, and they started slow, right? And they ultimately ended up missing the playoffs by one game. That first week loss to New England
Played a lot of the preseason this year.
Brutal. Exactly. That's my point, Trysta.
Almost died.
Almost died. Exactly. My Commander's almost like, but that's my point, is that they realize that they have to get up to a hot start. So the fact that Burrow has been playing in the preseason, you just heard the clip there, feels as healthy as he's been in a long time. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase both got paid, both in camp, focused, ready to go. Seems like, whether it's Yoshevich or Mitchell Tinsley, they've found some nice depth around those guys. They brought back
in the league last year. If that improves, he could be QB1 overall.
Yeah, I think it's a weird thing, Trysta, where I think the offensive line being so bad, it almost helps Burrow's fantasy value in a way because they can't run the ball like super efficiently because of the O-line, and then also he has to throw so much and throw short and intermediate because he doesn't have the time to everything get blocked up to be dependent on the deep ball. So I think Burrow, he's just, in terms of pure passer, he is the highest floor guy by far.
Last thing on the Bengals, and then we'll move on, is that also Chase Brown. Remember last year, at the beginning of the year, they had, Zach Moss, who's kind of this plotter, playing half the snaps, and now they've got Chase Brown, who's this explosive guy out of the backfield who can catch the ball, that you can dump it off. If they're playing back, if the DBs are playing back because they're worried about Higgins and Chase, dump it off to Chase Brown, who can run 15 yards, run 20 yards, right? So we're all in on the Bengals offense.
Yeah, let's go to Tier 3. Mahomes, Mayfield, Nix, Fields, Murray, Purdy, Prescott, and Goff. A meaty one. Mahomes, fresh haircut, fresh season, feeling excited.
Yeah, I think you learned, I didn't learn this, but you know how hungry these guys are. I started in OTAs, and guys are ready to compete. They're ready to get out there and prove who we are. And we have a lot of young guys, and I think it's bringing a lot of energy to the team to add with the veteran leadership that we have. And so I'm excited for the team and excited to get out there. And we got a good last few preseason games, and then we have a great early schedule. So I think guys are really ready to get out there and showcase who we are.
Yeah, there's a lot of disparity and question marks around this tier. Who, Matthew, is your favorite target or some of your favorite targets in this tier?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the point where I'm saying, like, if you don't get one of the elite guys, like, I like to wait because I think you're fine with any of this. And I don't think there's a huge difference between all these guys. I mean, I will say, I think there's a scenario where Patrick Mahomes just goes scorched earth this year and is just, out for revenge after the tough ending last year. But look, you guys know that Bo Nix, who last year, from week 8 on last year was the 6th best quarterback in fantasy on a points per game basis as well. Justin Fields is a guy that I like a lot. We've talked about him, just the high floor with the rushing. He's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback every single year in points per game when he's been a starter. And then I'll also mention, we've talked about Dak Prescott a lot here, Jay.
Yeah, Dak, we forget that 2 years ago he literally finished second in MVP. Was putting up a massive passing season. I think Mahomes, it's weird to say this about Patrick Mahomes, I think there's a good chance to go down as the greatest quarterback of all time, but he in a way is the biggest X factor of the season because he's shown, and I get that his weapons weren't great and the O-line wasn't great, there's still some underlying stuff with Mahomes where he didn't avoid sacks as well as he did in previous years. His accuracy on deep balls wasn't as good. Like, has there actually been a little bit of slippage with Mahomes, or is it just because of the weapons and not being on the same page with Xavier Worthy? Now they bring in Josh Simmons to shore up left tackle. They'll be healthier at receiver. Rice, now we have certainty that he's back for week 7. Worthy will be better. Hollywood Brown is going to be a better number 2 option early on than they had last year. So I agree. I tend to skew towards just greatness kicking in and Mahomes having a monster season.
But he was not a good fantasy quarterback last year relative, and the Chiefs.
Or the year before.
It was weird. Like the Chiefs, all season long, it was just like the Chiefs can't keep getting away with it. Yeah. And then it finally got to the Super Bowl when they couldn't.
I mean,
and then they didn't.
I mean, they still in the Super Bowl, but it's like.
The Eagles kick their ass.
Yeah, so we talked about, I just want to say real quick about Dak Prescott. If there's any guy that could have the most similar numbers to a Joe Burrow, I would bet on it being Dak Prescott because he should have, similar passing attempt numbers. He's got George Pickens now. We know Dak Prescott is one of the better deep ball throwers in the NFL, so George Pickens will help in that aspect. And obviously, they got CeeDee Lamb, your boy Eights, as you like to call him. And then we look at their running back room. There's something to be desired there, too. Yeah. So
that's the nicest thing that's been said about the Cowboys running back room all year long.
And I'm a really nice guy on Thursdays. So, I'll say that about the Cowboys running back room. So I think Dak Prescott can have those type of numbers.
It does worry me whenever Mike Tomlin goes away from a talented player. You saw it with Antonio Brown. You saw it with Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm, as a Cowboy fan, very concerned about what that means for the George Pickens-Dak Prescott connection. The upside is there, but I am a little
number 2.
skeptical.
No, the pro George Pickens argument is that unlike being the main guy in Pittsburgh, where it was always a conservative offense, pre and post Arthur Smith. Now he's going to go to Dallas, where he doesn't have to do much in terms of CeeDee Lamb's going to be the focal point of the passing offense. You got Jake Ferguson there as well, and so with George Pickens, you're like, hey, just run deep. Here's a couple of deep routes, and then
he got his role.
He's got his role, and so he doesn't have to take on a lot. And Dak Prescott is one of the more accurate deep ball throwers in the NFL, and so I think that's the idea. Because look, Pickens played less than 60% of the snaps, even when he was, quote, the alpha wide receiver in Pittsburgh, just because he struggled with routes. But I think in Dallas, he's in a much better situation with a better quarterback and a more defined role for him where he doesn't have to take on so much pressure here. But if you can throw up the tier 3 screen again, we like all these guys, and I think you can wait if you don't get one of the elite guys, but there are question marks about each one of them, right? So is Mahomes Mahomes from a couple years ago or Mahomes from last year, right? Baker Mayfield has the most touchdown passes in the NFL over the last 2 seasons, but his touchdown success rate was really, really high. Is there a negative regression to the mean where that comes down a little bit? Bo Nix, we love him, but we've only seen it for half a season. Justin Fields, New York media has claimed its share of victims. If the Jets got up to a slow start, Kyler Murray, look, my worst ride or die call, potentially ever. Will he run? Because last year he did not run.
And he's talking about, I really want to run this year. My team needs me to.
We think he will. They say he will.
Actions over words.
Right, and Brock Purdy, who's he throwing to other than Ricky Pearsall and George Kittle? That's a concern there as well. We talked about Dak. Dak needs to stay healthy. And then Jared Goff. Do they go more run heavy with Gibbs and Montgomery? And if their defense is healthy, are they not as many shootouts?
Yeah, and also he doesn't get 14 games inside this year, Jared Goff.
Yeah, so again, I like all of those guys, but I'm just saying, like, you can nitpick a little bit with each of them, where I don't think you can with the top 4 guys, and so that's the reason why. But the difference between Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff, I don't think is significant. So again, that's why I say if I'm not one of the first guys in my league to get a quarterback, I want to be one of the last.
Johnny Walker, LA, been drinking that Johnny Walker.
Yeah.
Am I crazy to think Bo Nix has a better passing season than Jalen Hurts? I think yes.
What do we determine by that, like a better passing season? Because if we're talking about
efficiency?
accuracy, that ain't going to happen.
No.
If we're talking about passing yards, that could happen. Passing touchdowns could be close. So it just depends what we judging it by.
Has to do with the attempts, too.
Yeah, Bo Nix just isn't going to have 15 rushing touchdowns, though, like Jalen Hurts.
No, yeah, exactly. But could he?
Wait, did the question say passing?
He said passing.
Okay.
Could Bo Nix throw from? Could Bo Nix throw for more yards and more passing touchdowns than Jalen Hurts? Of course.
Sure.
Again, Hurts' fantasy value comes from the fact that he's getting 10 rushing touchdowns this year. He's getting double-digit rushing touchdowns. We think he throws a lot more than last year, but could Nix just completely air it out? I mean, for sure. Again,
is that what they want to do in Denver, though? They've got multiple running backs. They want to lean on their defense. Is that how Sean Payton's going to run things?
The thing with Nix is that he's always, it's short stuff and it's deep stuff. Like, it's not middle of the field, it's not intermediate. So he does have some upside if he just runs hot on the deep stuff. And he does have deep weapons in Cortland Sutton, in Marvin Mims.
Correct.
So there is some scope there. And also, like, he's going into year 2. And I get that, he was an older, kind of established, developed rookie, but there's still talent scope for Nix to get better.
I mean, Sean Payton has always been a fantasy-friendly offense, another guy that sort of like keeps the foot on the pedal no matter what the scoreboard says. And the fact is that in addition to, we expect a bigger role for Marvin Mims. They drafted Pat Bryant. They brought in Evan Ingram, who I think is really going to help out in the underneath stuff as well. R.J. Harvey is a really nice pass-catching running back. So I think there's going to be, and J.K. Dobbins I think is going to be, as long as he stays healthy, is a hammer up the middle that helps set up play action. He's a threat with his legs. So I do think there's absolutely a scenario where Bo Nix has a better passing year than Jalen Hurts. Again, Bo Nix made my love list, so I'm in on Bo Nix. I'm pro Bo Nix, but I can certainly understand that, we've seen it for half a season. So there's certainly, he's not a sure thing.
Let's go to Tier 4. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love, and J.J. McCarthy. For you, Matthew, how big of a gap is there between Tier 3 and Tier 4?
I think there's a little bit of one, but not that much, to be perfectly honest. I mean, again, Caleb Williams gets more rushing yards than you think. He had 9 different games last year with at least 30 or more rushing yards. We've talked about the improved offensive line, the drafting of Colston Loveland. We think Rome Odunze takes another step this year. Drake Maye, we expect big things from Drake Maye this year with Josh McDaniels calling the plays, more designed runs. We like, the addition of Stephon Diggs. We have high hopes for Kyle Williams, another year of Pop Douglas, Travion Henderson out of the backfield, of course. But I'm also really high on Trevor Lawrence. Again, I think there is fantasy value to be had across the board in Jacksonville. I don't think BTJ is being drafted too high. I absolutely love Travis Hunter. I think that if you're in a deep, super deep league, Brenton Strange at tight end, Parker Washington in a deep PPR league, I think has a little bit of value. Lawrence gets you more points with his legs than you think. Liam Cohen, when you think about, kind of offense that he ran with Baker Mayfield last year, they're going to throw. Because, again, that's a team that's also, similar to Cincinnati, is going to have an awful defense.
Yep, C.J. Stroud's also an interesting one. C.J. Stroud's being drafted like QB6, QB7 last year. That's upper range after an epic rookie season. I think he's probably been written off a little bit too quickly. I think that he has, with a full season and Nico Collins, who I think is a top 5 receiver in the sport, he could really bounce back.
The hate's gone too far.
Yes, I agree. I don't think there's that much of a difference between Stroud and the other guys in this tier, and even guys like Prescott, Goff. Are they so far ahead of C.J. Stroud? Like, I'd rather have C.J. Stroud at value. Jordan Love, I think, will bounce back just with a healthier season overall. We forget that Jordan Love was a top 5 fantasy quarterback in 2023, despite having the growing pains of effectively being a rookie quarterback that season. So I think that Love, and I get that his weapons aren't amazing, but he's got a lot of lottery tickets, and one of them can hit.
That's what I was going to ask you is why was Jordan Love in Tier 4 and not in 3? Just the uncertainty with Jayden Reed in a boot, and you've got Matthew Golden, the rookie.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things, right? So he doesn't run. He doesn't run at all. they want to run. They tend to be more run heavy with Josh Jacobs. You know, LaFleur likes to play ball control offense. They have a pretty good defense. They're in a really tough division. He has had trouble staying healthy. Mm-hmm. And to your point, like, we're excited about Matthew Golden. Like, I'm a believer in Matthew Golden this year, but we know Watson's out. Jayden Reed is banged up. Now he's going to try to play through the pain. We have not seen any kind of consistent production out of Dontavian Wicks or Romeo Doubs. We think Tucker Kraft is going to take a step this year and break through, but he's not proven either. So, but to your point, Trysta, which is you're like, wait a minute, like, Jordan Love has been a top 5 fantasy quarterback at points in his career for periods of time.
Got injured week
and I've got him
one
at QB 19.
Recovered.
I'm sorry?
Got injured week 1 last year and never really recovered.
Right. So, I mean, to Jay's point, again, like, if he's fully healthy, this is somebody who is paid as one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and we've seen it. We just haven't seen it for long stretches, but there's certainly a scenario, and that's why the difference between tier 3 and tier 4 is not really that great. And I keep saying it. If I don't get one of those 4 elite guys, I'm perfectly fine being literally the last guy to get a starting quarterback in my league.
Yeah, before we get to Jake's question, and my answer to that question is going to be Jordan Love anyway, but to push back, and you're right, last year they ran the ball a ton. They were 31st in pass rate over expectation. Now, some of that is Malik Willis. Some of that, Josh Jacobs having a really good season. I think it was that Jordan Love just wasn't healthy the whole year.
Yeah.
Because in 2023, they were 10th in pass rate over expectation. So I think we're going to see a more balanced offense this year. I think they'll throw more, assuming Love stays healthy.
Yeah, and I'll say this, like, interesting, like, I get, I did my love-hate, my final love-hate last week. Please go read it on NBCSports.com, rotoworld.com. I'm a company man. But, like, on my hate list for quarterbacks, I didn't have that many guys, and, I got crap for it. Like, and I'm just like, honestly, there's so many good quarterbacks this year. There are so many quarterbacks where you could sit here and go, like, yeah, I can see it. We have J.J. McCarthy at QB 20.
Yeah, how he sneak in there in that 4th tier?
You don't think he should be?
No, I'm just because you got like you got a Bryce Young, and we'll get to tier 5 in a minute, but a guy who kind of did a little something. And I'm asking, is it related to, like, Justin Jefferson, Kevin O'Connell? Like, what's the...
Last year, Sam Darnold was left for dead and was a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Indeed.
And Kevin O'Connell, friend of the podcast and coach of the year, Kevin O'Connell, basically said, you know what? I could franchise tag Sam Darnold. I could try to work out a 2-year deal with guaranteed money in the first year and keep him around to sort of train J.J. McCarthy, But he was just like, no, we're good with a guy that they drafted, early in the first round 2 years ago. And so I'm banking on O'Connell's system, what I saw from McCarthy in college, and the weapons. With Jefferson and Hawkinson, and they just added Adam Thielen, and they're going to get Jordan Addison back in 3 games. And Jalen Naylor had some moments. Like, if he made Sam Darnold was left for dead and just signed a $40 million contract, was a top 10 guy.
Probably wouldn't even start it if McCarthy
doesn't get hurt.
Yeah. A first-year quarterback has never had a better situation than J.J. McCarthy.
Jake Trowbridge says, which of these tier 4 guys has the best chance to finish as a top 5 fantasy quarterback, Matthew? Jay says Jordan Love.
Because he already did it.
Because he already did it. Who else would it be besides Jordan Love?
I think it's honestly, like, if I have to pick one, I was going to say Caleb Williams. If I have to pick one, I think it's Caleb Williams. Like, there's a reason why he was drafted number 1 overall. You mentioned J.J. McCarthy has the best situation. Caleb Williams probably has the second best situation of a year 2 player. Of course, him and McCarthy part of the same draft class. Caleb did play last year. J.J. didn't. But Caleb, with all the weapons they've given him, new head coach, a fantasy-friendly head coach and play caller in Ben Johnson, really good offensive line. When Caleb Williams had time last year, even in that disaster of an offense, he was good. He can make all the throws. He runs more than you give him credit for. So I do think Caleb Williams, if he puts it all together, but I could see a scenario where Drake Maye, who had, in 60% of his completed games last year in a disaster in offense with no offensive line and no one around him, still scored at least 17 fantasy points. So with more designed runs for Drake Maye, I could see it. And Trevor Lawrence, again, like, it's an easy comparison just because they're both Jacksonville quarterbacks, but like Blake Bortles, the Lord of Junk Time, Blake Bortles was a top 10 fantasy quarterback for multiple years in Jacksonville because they'd get their asses kicked and then he would just throw up all this junk time. And I think Jacksonville will be better than that. But again, BTJ, a year from now, we're going to be talking about BTJ and Travis Hunter in the same breath that we talk about with like Chase and Higgins. And, is this one of the best duos in Puka and Devontae Adams? Like, they're going to be up there as like among the elite duo wide receivers in the NFL. I think Lawrence, there's a good quarterback in there with Trevor Lawrence.
People don't know this, Trista, but if you say the words Blake Bortles 5 times, he appears just like the Candyman.
Yeah, he'll be here.
Somebody vetoed a trade for me one time with Blake Bortles. I was like, bruh, it's Blake Bortles.
Look at Raise the Flags here. Raise the Flags. It might
After you killed him yesterday.
Right, by the way, this is, welcome back, Raise the Flags. By the way, this might be Denny Carter's burner account because something the mainstream media won't tell you is that Trevor Lawrence was only 7 points less than Baker Mayfield in 2023. Trevor, again, it was a disaster of an offense. I'm in on the Jaguars as fantasy value this year.
Well,
sure.
if you're high on Travis Hunter and you're high on BTJ, then why are we so low on Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I ask the same question sometimes is why do we draft Jalen Waddle and Tyreek, but they don't like Tua? So I don't see what the difference is in Tua has proven more in this league than Trevor Lawrence has.
I'll take the Jags duo of those two.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we glad to make a bet.
Yeah.
The argument is health. Tua's health and the health of, Waddle, Achane, and Tyreek have all been injured over the last 2 years. So it's not just Tua's health, but also the health of his primary offense. And by the way, Tua doesn't run. Trevor Lawrence will get you 20 to 30 rushing yards a game. Like he is similar to he's similar to like sort of Caleb Williams or Justin Herbert or Mahomes, something like that. Like he's not Josh Allen or Jayden Daniels, but he is somebody that will get you 2 to 3 points with his legs.
Fascinating tier 5. Michael Penix, Bryce Young, Tua Tagovailoa, Cam Ward. We've got Daniel Jones on this list. Geno Smith, who had a pretty good year last year. Matthew Stafford, a lot of injury question marks around him. Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, and Jaxson Dart. What a beefy list.
Yeah.
Can anyone to you in this group become a viable starter in a one-quarterback league?
When Jaxson Dart is the starting quarterback of the Giants, 100%. Jaxson Dart's going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback when he's the starter for the Giants. He's going to be running around like crazy. He's going to be,
what if he don't start this year?
He's going to start this year. He'll start this year. But, he's going to be like a borderline QB1, Jaxson Dart. It's just when does he get that start here? And, look, Lawrence, it was a super small sample size, but there's absolutely a scenario where Michael Penix just, is a rocket ship this year.
Yeah, Michael Penix, again, small sample size, like you said, but he's coming into the season this year knowing he's the starter.
Yep.
Last year, it was kind of like how you just said about Jaxson Dart, like, when is he going to start? That's how it was with Michael Penix last year, but now that we know it's his offense, we know he has the rapport with Drake London. We saw Drake London and Bijan Robinson both take their game to a next level when Michael Penix was in the lineup.
Yeah, a little bit worried about Caleb McGarry being out for the season with Penix on his blind side, but I agree. He's got a ton of upside. Yeah. He's going to throw it perhaps deeper than anyone else in the NFL. I think Daniel Jones is being a little bit slept on. Daniel Jones in 2022 was a borderline top 10 fantasy quarterback. He uses his legs. Shane Steichen promised us he's the quarterback all year. He's going to get a leash. He's got better weapons than he ever did in New York. He's got a better offensive line than he ever got in New York. So I think Daniel Jones, I don't think he's going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback, but particularly, Superflex leagues, you need a third QB. I like him more than a lot of other guys.
Hold on real quick. We just got to add real quick that the reason why Jay is saying this is why. What's special? What else is special about Daniel Jones?
He may be my quarterback. Now, to be fair, I have Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert as well, but he's third string.
Yeah, you just watch Jay Croucher talk himself into it on national TV. But jokes aside, I actually agree with you. We love Tyler Warren, obviously. Josh Downs. Pittman is a solid veteran. He doesn't have to carry the offense the way he did in New York because he's got Jonathan Taylor as well. I do think Steichen's offense, where you get the quarterback on the move and you do a bunch of RPO, is actually a perfect fit for Daniel Jones's skill set. Actually, and not a tough division. And I will say that I think there's something, people forget this, about how, again, I talk about this all the time, how players are human beings. Like they have egos and they have insecurities and anger and everything like that. And I think there's a different mentality for Daniel Jones, whereas he's come into New York as the 6th overall pick, and all the media is like, that guy? Why'd you draft that guy? No one had him that early. And then he's struggling in New York media and being blamed, and the way it ended in New York wasn't great. Now it's sort of like, I could see Daniel Jones kind of having an F-it mentality. Like, what else can they do to me, man? Like, I was released. I was out of football. I'm in Indy now. Like, screw it. Like,
Daniel Jones is only 28.
Right, I know.
Like 3 years older than Bo Nix or something.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. K Gemma 89. Evil J WTF riding on Danny Penny's. Barry Reign of Terror will continue if this league is with him.
You know what? KG Ma 89.
Terrifying.
You right, man. These guys talking like Daniel Jones.
He's my backup quarterback.
Listen.
I think the
We're
best
in tier 5. We're talking up tier 5.
Tell him about Bryce Young,
I think
Lawrence.
the best person in this tier is Bryce Young.
That's fair.
We talk about like he's done like quarterback 8 in fantasy points per game over his last 7 starts. That's not a 2 or 3 game stretch. That's half the damn fantasy football season. And even in the preseason, it's like it carried over. As soon as they put Teteroy McMillan in it, boom, he hit him on the deep route. Like, it's going to be smooth.
And he's got wheels.
He does, yeah. I mean, he surprisingly, he scored a lot of rushing touchdowns down the stretch, which is one of the reasons why that fantasy points were elevated down the stretch. So if they use that more, again, T-Mac, if Leggett can take another step, Cokeheads Unite, Jalen Coker going to be in 11 personnel with them, as we've talked about. The Chubbler, the original Chubbler.
Well, no, not the original
Chubbler.
The secondary Chubbler.
The original Chubbler on this show, Chuba Hubbard, nice out of the backfield. So I'm with you on Bryce Young and Michael Penix. But I'm just saying, like, if you're in a deeper league, a Superflex league, which we're going to get to, Daniel Jones is probably somebody that, like, you can hold your nose, and he'll be better in fantasy than you think.
If I had Daniel Jones in a Superflex league, I'm trying to draft Anthony Richardson, which Jay tried to do.
Yeah, we'll try to.
Yeah, he got
Anthony Richardson.
That's true.
Shocker.
Big Ten Saturday.
Snipe.
Big Ten Saturday night is back. We're kicking off the season from the Big House as 14th ranked Michigan hosts New Mexico. Cover begins 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Here comes Saturday night. On the back end of this break, more quarterback conversation coming up next. We're going to dive into Superflex Strategy. I need some help. My draft is Sunday. all of our real sicko regulars out there, you can catch multiple draft season marathons of fantasy football happy hour over the next few days. That includes a mammoth 12-hour marathon this Sunday. That's all for free on the NBC Sports Now channel.
It's, what is it, Clark Brady is going to live stream himself watching that. I believe that's the case. In the
it's frightening stuff.
He's talked from what I understand, he's talked his fiance into it. We'll see if the nuptials
She's going to watch with him?
No, as long as she doesn't break up with him, I think it's a win.
So long as we just get to the marriage. We just have to get to the wedding for Clark.
Here you go. Clark Brady, he tweeted this the other day. Got a live stream planned for the August 31st at 9 a.m. where you can watch me react to all 12 hours of the NBC Sports Fantasy Marathon. My fiance is already.
The ring is coming back, brother. You better see if it's on. You can return that.
I think you found a good one, Clark. Yeah. She's worth hanging on to. She's concerned about
Report to us next week when you show us the proof that you did watch everything. We'll see there.
Oh my goodness!
All right.
I am in a Superflex league that drafts Sunday.
Okay.
And I don't know where my draft position is until I'm right in the room.
Right.
So I'm going to need a little
randomized
help.
Before
real sicko stuff.
Yep.
What is the QB? Let's talk first about the ADP 1 through 10, because if you have a QB strategy, if you don't have one of the top 4 QBs, I just kind of want to get a little advice.
So this ADP, of course, is from FantasyLife.com, where the consensus ADP tool takes the average draft position among all the major sites, puts it together. It's a great tool. You can pick and choose which site you want to use as well. But across all the sites in Superflex, Josh Allen goes 1, Lamar goes 2, Chase is 3, Jayden 4, Hurts 5, Bijan, Burrow, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then so on, as you see it here as we move on to the second level as well. But basically, it seems like that if you don't, the top guys go at the very top. But then, as we've talked about, if you're not one of getting those first guys, you're more comfortable getting a Bijan, a Gibbs, a CeeDee Lamb, a Chase, a Burrow, fill sort of out the first round. I want a quarterback in the first 2 rounds of a super flex. I don't mind if I'm picking in the middle to second half of the round there, Trista. I don't mind getting one of those elite players one of those elite positional players once the quarterbacks are gone. But on the come around, I want to get something there, because if you think about it, then by the time it gets you at the end of the 3rd round, you don't want to go into the draft with, Matthew Stafford as your number 1.
Listen, you just don't want to end up in a situation where your 2 quarterbacks are Bryce Young and Michael Penix. That's just where you just you cannot end up there.
Like that?
You cannot end up there in situations. You're going to do everything you can to avoid that.
That's factually correct as well. I will say this, that if you get sniped out of quarterbacks, one thing that a strategy that I do think would actually work here is drafting Joe Flacco, and hang on, hear me out. Again, in a Superflex league where you're desperate for a quarterback.
And Damar Hamlin?
Yeah. Make no mistake. Yeah, Penix and Bryce Young, and just try to talk himself into Daniel Jones on national TV.
You should as well.
Trista,
we
only
just
listen
read
to me.
the numbers on Bryce Young.
Trista, ignore the 2 of them. Only listen to me.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crouch's name dragged through the mud. He got 3 of the top 18 players by ADP apparently in a 12-team league.
There you go. No, what I will say is that Joe Flacco, I think, will be fantasy productive as long as he has the job. They're gonna sling it. He definitely has some YOLO to him. He was obviously very fantasy productive the last times he started for the Cleveland Browns. You may not know this, but he actually won Comeback Player of the Year based of those 5 games.
I thought Hamlin won it.
No, it was Joe Flacco.
Here's the problem with YOLO. He's gonna die, and you don't get to live twice.
I say, he got that YOLO in him, but he got that sacked and them pick 6s in him too now.
I think Joe Flacco will be a viable fantasy quarterback as long as he has the job. But I don't think he will keep the job all season. At some point, Jaxson Dart is going to take over New York, and I think he's going to be very fantasy viable once he gets that job. So again, if you're sitting there late and you've gotten sort of screwed out of all these quarterbacks and you're desperately trying to figure it out, I do think a combo of Flacco and Dart actually is a viable QB2. Again, assuming you've waited on quarterback a little bit too long.
I just say the other guy who I want us to back up, and I don't like to compliment my man Lawrence Jackson, but Anthony Richardson If he gets the job at some
course.
point, and Daniel Jones has a huge injury history, he runs, he's a risk. If AR gets the job because DJ is injured, then all of a sudden there is still a lot of upside in Anthony Richardson statistically.
Well, you mentioned just like who you should pick up maybe as a QB2, but in Superflex, how important is it to pick up a third quarterback just in case there's an injury issue? Because if you just have one in a Superflex league, you're kind of behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, for sure. I think the answer to that question depends on your roster construction and who your first 2 quarterbacks are. Right, so, like, in our Superflex league, I'll just tell you, my 2 quarterbacks are Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye. Barring injury, I have no concerns about either of those guys losing their job. Those guys are going to be the starter all year long. I ended up grabbing a third quarterback. I have Stafford as my third just because it'll give you some trade options. But if you have 2 superstar quarterbacks or 2 guys that you feel really good about at quarterback, you don't necessarily need to draft a third. But if you're sitting there with Bryce Young and Michael Penix,
well, we're going to come back to these clips.
By all means, listen, there's upside, Lawrence. I actually don't mind it because
I like those guys.
Right. We like those guys too. We think they both have upside, and the rest of your team is really strong. But they clearly both have question marks.
Of course.
So what I'm saying is like your third quarterback is Anthony Richardson, which I don't mind as an upside play, but I'd have felt better with you getting somebody like a Stafford who's not exciting or sexy, but again, Stafford is going to start every single game barring injury, and I feel like Bryce Young and Penix will as well, but again, because there's some question marks, I think...
Right, they're going to have their jobs, and I feel good about them. Superstar? Nah, but... If I could get Bryce Young that second half of the season, he don't even have to do that good. If he just does that, I feel like the rest of the team should be able to help anchor it.
I think the answer to the third quarterback question, Jay, is just basically how good you feel about the first 2.
Yeah, also, I've found Superflex drafts, everyone reaches for their third quarterback because they're worried about not just like the injury, but like bye week, do I have to throw a non-quarterback in a flex? It's like, I don't know, maybe instead of the third quarterback, just take Chris Godwin if he's on the board. Like, people, I think, do reach for that third
Well, and that's what I was just about to ask is, should you ever have a non-quarterback in that Superflex spot?
I mean, ideally, no. But at the same time, sometimes it's just unavoidable. And you're better off probably, you should go forward as though your 2 starting quarterbacks are hopefully going to be healthy and not reach for the third guy.
The other thing to remember is this is a violent game. I think the number is 56 different quarterbacks started a game last year. 56 different quarterbacks. And while you're not going to love, like, all right, I'm throwing out Easton Stick or whatever for this one game, right?
Easton
like
Stick.
He got
those
cut.
guys. Yes, I know he did. The Stickman got cut.
But
the Spencer Rattlers of the world, the Jake Hainers of the world, whatever, he also got cut. But my point is like, if you don't get a third quarterback and you do need one when a bye week comes up, chances are there will be a spot start quarterback that you don't love, but you can sort of live with for 1 week.
Last call coming up next, our best bets to win the NFC East. Right after break. DraftKings is the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL, and right now all Pick 6 customers can play free for a share of DraftKings' biggest bag ever. Hit all 6 picks for your cut of $1 million or more. Just download the Pick 6 app and use promo code FFHH when you sign up. Ride the upside with Pick 6. We got to talk about NFC East
You
Champion.
should do Pick 6 with Daniel Jones there.
Oh, was Jameis not available? I thought he trademarked it.
Yeah.
Okay, Trista, I'm taking the New York Giants. Screw it, 18-1. We
There
go
you
back
go.
to the
He's
well.
doing it again.
This could be a top 5 defense in football.
Yeah, he took him at 80-1 last year. So did
it win last year?
They did
no,
not.
it don't.
Yeah.
No, they went 3-14.
Yeah.
Going back to the well. I think it should be 14-1. So I don't think they're going to do it, but I do think there is upside here. Also, Jaxson Dart. Who knows? Maybe he is the answer.
They do have a legitimately good defense. So if they can get something figured out on offense, a couple breaks goes their way,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to talk him. I'm trying to give the guy a bump.
18-1.
They're going to be tough, but no. If I was going to take the value, I'd take the Cowboys, but I'm not taking the value. I'm taking the Eagles, who haven't changed anything much on their offense or their defense. They'll be right back there in the mix.
Yeah, for me, I just love Jayden Daniels. If this offensive line gets better, you got a
Welcome to the show, Trysta
Terry
Krick.
McLaurin is back. I like the value. I don't think the Eagles are going to repeat. It hasn't happened in a long time, so I'm going to roll with the plus 220.
That is true. The NFC East, I think it's 18 straight years.
Matthew?
18 straight years there has not been a repeat champion. So give me the Commanders at plus 220. Of course. Hail to the Commanders. Hail
baby.
victory. Raise hail. Who do you think I'm taking? For the love of God, it's the most obvious bet in the universe. I cannot wait to have money raining down on me as my Commanders win the NFC East. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here because it's closing time. For Lawrence and Jay and Trista and Matthew, we are not live tomorrow, but it will be on at noon. Peace out.